All right, guys, the moment you've been waiting for. Part 6, we're going to release our latex molds from the plaster and see if we've got a finished product that we can reuse. Crossing our fingers. Let's check it out. All right, almost forgot to start the camera there. I didn't get too far though. I was able to cut the sides on this mold and just released the sides off of the mold. And then I'm going to try and flip this up. See what happens here. Okay, it looks like some of the latex is just stuck to the styrene, but it looks like it's releasing quite easily. All right, so there's our styrene. Here's our mold. Now, this one doesn't look like it's stuck in the latex, which could be a good thing. So let's see if we can pop this out. Now remember, in here is the original. It's coming. It's already making its way, but I don't want to pull too much on one side because I don't want to crack the whole thing. Let's get in the center here. Okay. There's our original. Looks like it got a little bit of plaster on it in different places, but still the original cast. Just gonna wrap that back up. Just gonna set it aside because we don't want to break that. And now here is the mold we created. That's the latex. And that's the mold. Now, this was only drying for about an hour. So you can see that it's still a little damp compared to the color it would be when it dries, which is pretty white like the mold we just took out. So that's a success on that part. Now the only thing we need to do is put this back in, and we actually need to recast something. But I think what I'm going to do is let this sit and dry completely before I go adding more liquid to it. So let's give it overnight, and we'll come back in the morning. We'll pop this back in. We'll make a new cast, and if we can get one replica, we did our job. So we'll be back in the morning. All right, guys. New day, new face. Shaved a little bit. I knew I looked a little different. Wanted to show you the last part. Here we are, part 6. So what I did was I took I took the cast that you and I made, and I let it dry overnight, and I just made up some more plaster soup, and I poured it into the latex, and that shouldn't take too long to dry. So it's drying now. I did both. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. It's already been sitting there drying for about 30 minutes. So I'll give it a little more time. But before I get to that, I think they will turn out okay. That's the good. Let's get to the bad of the project. So, as you guys know, let me drop you down here. This one here is the one that I made with you. Looks really good. It's got the even sides. It was made with the styrene using the tape. The cast came out very well. The latex released from the cast perfectly. No issues there. Slide that aside for a minute. This was my original. This is the one that I made first. So, you guys saw the magic of everything happening in a row flawlessly. That's not the way it happened. So, this mold, I got all the way up to this part with the other one. 2 things went wrong. When I poured the outer cast, when I still had the original inside, and I poured the original cast, which this is the original cast, I made the mistake of letting it sit overnight. So when the original was in here, remember that sits on top of the latex and it's stuck there. When I poured the cast shrunk around the original. And I never took it out. I let it sit overnight. So when the next day came and I took it out and it looked just like this, and I was like, hey, success. Unfortunately, when I went to separate the latex from the mold, the outer casting, it wasn't budging. I couldn't get it out for the life of me. I tried pulling. I thought I was going to rip the latex. I was pulling so hard. So I was faced with 2 choices. Do I break the outer cast that I just made and recast that, knowing I still had the original and the latex mold? Or do I break the original mold, knowing that I have the casting and the latex, and I can always make more of these? Well, I fiddled with it for a little bit, and I tried some more pulling, and the cast kind of decided for me. This is the original. It broke out in 3 pieces and came right out of the latex mold, just like that. So that's what I was left with. Now, I sat and I thought to myself, it's not a total loss. Because what I can do is I can still use this. I can still attach this to the layout and weather it in such a way that those cracks are visible, and then it just looks like an old, dilapidated tunnel portal. So it's not a total loss. I was a little disappointed that it happened, but I think I can make it work. So that was one part. Now, second part. Going back to the one that you and I did together. At least you think it's the one that you and I did together. When I casted the big mold, knowing that I didn't want this one to sit, I let this one sit overnight. I didn't want this one to sit long. So I thought, while this thing was upside down, I said to myself, you know, I'm only going to let this sit for about an hour or two, and then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to get the styrene off, and then I'm going to see if I can get the latex out of it with the original mold in it and see what happens. Well, as I'm pulling on these corners and trying to get the latex out, I got that. So this, unfortunately, is a total waste. I can't piece that back together, and I wouldn't be able to use that for anything. That being said, with the magic of the camera, I put this back on there, back on the styrene, recasted it, and made what you see now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull these out, and we're going to see if these inner castings hold up enough that we can use them. If they break, I'll have to do it again. So let me get this cleaned up, and we'll go that route. Okay, let's take the old casting first. Now, you and I already pulled the latex out of the original cast, so this thing should just jump right up without much of a problem. There we go. Now we can set that aside. Same goes for this. This was already pulled out, so we should be able to grab a corner very gently. Oh, this one's not as forgiving. Okay. Same thing. Look at that. Maybe, possibly, I should have let that sit a little more. But maybe we can still use it. Set that aside. Now I'm wondering if I should even try to attempt to pull this out. But it looks like it's peeling okay. Let's go a little at a time. See what we got. Now this is the original one that you and I did not do. And that looks like a success. Now I notice already from here, there's a couple air bubbles, but that just adds to the definition of the casting. But that is a replica of the original part. And again, I can always reuse this. And now I've got two. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this on camera, but you notice the casting that came out is darker than the original. What I heard, and I'm going to try it, what I heard is this one is still full of water, and that's why it's darker. This one has been fired, meaning it's been in an oven, and that's why all the water's been pulled out of it, and it looks like that. So what I heard was throw this in the oven at like 350 degrees for 2 to 3 hours. And that will harden this up and pull all the water out, and it will look as white as that. The problem with this one now is you can still scratch this and make changes, which actually isn't a bad thing if you plan to, like, you know, weather it. You could put your own cracks in it at this point if you want, but it's very fragile. So let's just slide that aside. We'll get the original out of the way. Let's see how much damage we have with this one. Now, again, I'm not too upset at this because this is not the original. This is a casting I made, so not upset that it cracked. And again, if it comes out relatively okay, I can still use the crack. And I can keep making more as long as I have my pieces. So another thing that I did, actually I didn't do it on this one, but I can go back and do it. But my original cast, when I did it, I marked on the back. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I put my name, the year, and the model of the part. So this one is C1255. So I know to always use that one with this mold. And I think what I'm going to do is on the back of here, maybe in marker, or maybe even put a label on there or something with the same information so that I know to put that with that. And the only reason you want to do that is because the profile of this one has all of the contours of this mold. So this one, while it does kind of fit there, you don't want to pour your plaster in here and this deform. I've never tried it, but you may get a hybrid between the two. So you just want to make sure that you keep your latex molds together. This one goes with that. This one goes with that. That's how I'll store them. I'm also going to fire these. These will go in the oven so that I can get these to a more drier, whiter consistency. Okay, one more tipster from the Rickster. So just as I mentioned about firing these things to make them stronger and whiter, at the same time, I can take this and I can fire it. And once I get all of the moisture out of it, I can then put this in a bucket, pound it back to dust, and then recycle it back into my bucket of plaster and reuse it. So while I can't use it in the state that it's in, if I decide to use it again, you do have to fire it first. If you were to just take this and pound the crap out of it and then try and reuse it, it will never leave the soupy state. Once you add water to it, it'll never harden. I'm not going to say it'll never harden, but it would take a damn long time to harden. So that being said, fire it, crush it, recycle. So this just has one crack down the center, and don't know if you could see this, but it's very interesting. It looks like when I poured the mold, the latex must have warped a little bit, and it actually looks like this line up here where there should be bricks is kind of a little uneven, which, yes, is a defect, but can also be considered a part of settling bricks. Again, gives definition to the part. I don't know if that's going to happen with every casting after, but if it doesn't, then I've got a unique mold for every one that I make. So keep that in mind. Now this one has a slight bow going this way. I'm not sure if you can see it. It kind of looks straight, but it doesn't from my point of view. It's kind of warped. But again, this can be glued on or put somewhere and weathered up so that all you see is that one little crack. And it's still a tunnel portal. So I'm going to say this was a success. And I'm going to stick with it. So now you've seen the whole process from part 1 to part 6. This is how you make a latex mold using plaster. And not just for tunnel portals. You can do almost anything. You can make casts of cars. You can make casts of, barrels, hay bales, anything that you buy. If you go to the hobby store and you find a 2-pack of hay bales, you can make a latex mold of them and then create 20 hay bales. Same thing with barrels or crates, or, I wouldn't go as far as to say you can make a dog, but I'm pretty sure you could. At the same time, you can make a truck, you can make a car, you can make a shed. Sparky, I can make a shed. It won't look like yours, but I can make a shed in plaster from latex. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed the series. If I can come up with another project, I will definitely film that. Right now, I've got nothing else on the slate. I really want to get back to my trains. It's been a couple of weeks. I still got to get these inclines in that I got 2 weeks ago and get started on this side of the layout. So I'm hoping I can film that and you guys can join me on that journey. And as always, let's ride these rails together. I'll see you guys.